Hello, my little dialogues. I hope this video finds you well. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section of our distance learning. In this particular case, we're going to focus on something that we would have normally covered in a full unit in class. I'm going to cover it very, very briefly. Now, in this particular case, let's go ahead and talk about movement itself. There are two types of movement in art. There is implied movement, and then there's actual movement. Actual movement is when you have something that is actively moving. It is something that is moving and changing shape and adjusting itself. Maybe it's rolling, maybe it's dancing. You see these sorts of things in actual robots and stuff like that. Now, this is not actually a new concept, but it did not actually hit mainstream art for a long time. Now, when I say that it's not a new concept, I mean that we're talking, there are pieces and mechanisms from, I believe, 100 BC that still exist, that are still able to be found. Some of them are more focused on science than they are on art, such as a couple astronomical objects. But there's books on automata and automatons that were designed and published way back in the Middle Ages, and there's evidence of Da Vinci using some, and there are some that still exist that are still used. You can go ahead and go online, look those up. There's the automaton at the Swiss Museum that is just absolutely beautiful, and it actually physically writes. There's a couple of them that play instruments, that actually play the instrument. There's some old Chinese ones that actually actively shoot arrows across the room. If you're interested in looking for those, feel free to look for those on whenever you get a chance. And it's called, again, they're called automatons. M-A-U-T-O-M-A-T-O-N, automaton. I apologize. Now, there are, like I said, there are pieces going back for centuries. Now, in more recent times, movement was not considered a part of art per se until we started including things like animation and the advent of artworks from Alexander Calder. Now, Alexander Calder invented what's called the mobile. The mobile is something that you can actively, physically interact with. It doesn't do it by itself. It is something that you move, or the forces of nature move, or something like that. So beautiful windmills and wind activated objects and sculptures as well. Now, there are very different ways in order to do this, and there are lots of different ways to incorporate movement in art. Now, the second one, which is the implied art, that is what you find in drawings and animations. Now, even though in the animation it views it when you see it, it shows, and you can see from scene to scene to scene to scene to scene that the character is physically moving across the screen. However, it is still considered implied art because the actual scene, it's not actually physically moving. It's not an actual physical movement. It is an individual drawing implying that the object is moving across the screen. So if a ball is bouncing and it starts here and then moves here and then moves here and then moves here and moves here, it's not actively moving. It is showing you that motion. Now, what we're going to be doing for this week is we're going to be focusing on the actual physical movements. In this particular case, because Mother's Day is coming up, we are going to be making a type of card. Now, this card that we're making does this. This is a physical movement, very much like Alexander Calder's work. Even though this is not a mobile where it's hanging up from the ceiling or something like that, the ability to move it and change it from this little card into a larger piece is what's important. Now, I'm going to be walking you through this. This is a lot more, before you start getting all upset or frustrated, this is a lot easier than you think it is. Now, at the beginning of the year, we did origami cranes. The first step for that is going to be very similar to the origami crane, but let me go ahead and go through a few materials real quick. The first thing I'm going to go through is the materials that you need. You're definitely going to need glue. Now, you can use glue sticks or regular Elmer's glue or rubber cement. Use what you have. As long as it sticks the two sides together, it's going to work. Now, tape will not necessarily work for this project. It'll make things a lot more difficult for you. That is not what you want to do. Now, the next thing you're going to need at least 3 sheets of paper. You can use any type of paper that you want. It can be thick paper or thin paper or colored paper. It doesn't matter. Okay? It just changes what colors you're going to be able to use later if you want to use colors at all. Now, if you use a colored paper, I highly recommend using a black marker to put all your details onto your project in a little bit. The next thing you're going to need some sort of thicker material, whether you're using cardboard or in this case, this is a Kroger Circular. Not sponsored. Sorry. So you just need a thicker material. Now, you're going to be cutting that into a square and making a little cover for your card in a minute. The next thing you're going to need scissors, and you're going to need something to draw or color with. It doesn't have to be in color. I'm going to stress this, and I cannot stress this enough. It does not have to be in color. You can use whatever materials you want as long as you can write on the paper. If you have to use a pen for the entire project, use a pen for the entire project. If you have to use a pencil for the entire project, use a pencil for the entire project. I do want to see all the space filled. I don't want to see a bunch of empty space. I don't want it to just be like a few words and done. No, I want you to decorate it, put designs, whether it's a bunch of flowers or lines or zigzags or polka dots. Turn it into a Zentangle if you want. You're still going to fill the space. Now, in terms of materials, again, you can use whatever materials you have. Maybe you have pens. Maybe you have markers. Maybe you have brush markers. Maybe you have only a bunch of highlighters. Maybe you have just a regular pen. Maybe you have colored pencils or markers or fine line or highlighters or colored pencils. Sharpies work just fine. If you're gonna, don't message me asking if you can use a Copic marker versus a regular marker. Prismacolors are fine, Copics are fine, regular colors are fine. It doesn't have to be in color. You could use a Sharpie, you could use a pen, whatever you have. Okay? I'm not saying this because I'm frustrated with you. All I'm saying is that I want you to realize that you can use whatever you have available to you, and I don't want you to feel pressured to think that you have to follow my example on the exact materials that you're going to use. You do what you have. This whole situation is hard enough as it is. Don't feel stressed about it. I want you to enjoy these projects, make something that you love and you are proud of. That is all that matters. Now, remember, like I said, Mother's Day is coming up. Use this as a chance to make something that will make them happy. Right now is a time when people want to be happy. They want to have some semblance of normalcy. They want things to be a little bit more normal. And a project, a gift for your parent or your loved one on a holiday is a perfect thing to do. Now, obviously, if your mother isn't around, make it for somebody that is. Make it for someone that matters to you. It doesn't have to be for Mother's Day. It could be whatever. Maybe a birthday's coming up. Maybe your parent got a raise. Maybe your grandparents did something and you're proud of them and you're happy for them. Make something that you're proud of and you want to make. It does not have to be specifically for Mother's Day. It can be for whatever holiday or whatever you want to give it to them for. Now, before we move on to the rest of the project, one thing I want to cover is the topic. Now, officially, we're supposed to be doing the topic on, I'm supposed to have you add poetry and stuff like that. Now, for your topic, I'm going to ask you to do either a poetry or quote. You do not have to use an entire poem. So if there's just one line, one sentence from that poem that you think is really important, all you have to do is you write down that sentence, put quotation marks, put a little dash line, and the name of the poem or the artist or the writer that you got it from, or even a TV show. Maybe it's a quote from Doctor Who. Maybe it's a quote from Star Wars. I don't know. You write what is important and matters to you. It can be a quote, or it can be a piece from a poem, or a piece from a song. A piece from a song is fine. But you need to make sure that put that little dash and then write down where you got it from. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and pause this, and then stop this, and we're going to go ahead and go down to the table so you can see how we're going to do this project. Alrighty, here we are down at the table. Now, as I said before, The first step for this project has a lot of similarities to the project when we did origami cranes. The first step is going to be to turn these into squares. Now I'm going to go ahead and move the rest of these papers out of the way for just a second. Now the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the right hand side and you're going to line it up with this bottom. Whoop, move this up a little bit so you can see the entire paper. How's that sound? There we go. You're going to take this right hand side. You're going to line it up with the bottom side of the paper. Make sure that this side is lined up entirely or it's not going to come up with a straight angle. Now this is a very important step and you want to make sure that you're lining this up because this is going to determine whether or not your piece is perfectly square or if it's lopsided. So you need to make sure that you're lining it up really, really well so you don't have any space showing down at this corner. So you can make sure that you press it down. Take something, anything. I'm going to go ahead and use the seam ripper. Just roll over the end and notice that it has a little bit of a section that's overlapped right there. It'll still work a little bit, so it doesn't have to be 100% perfect. I just want you to be able to see how this works. Now, if it has that, it's fine. As long as it's not like a very large gap, it'll still work. Now, next thing you're going to do, again, as I said, you're going to be turning it into a square. So you want to go ahead and cut off the extra outside of your square. Once you have cut it off, get rid of that. You don't need it. It's gone. Now, next thing you're going to do, you're going to open it, place it face down. If you can't do this and have it bounce back up, you're facing the wrong direction. So it needs to be able to do this. Bouncy, bouncy, bouncy. Okay, then you're going to push it down. You're going to fold it in half. Like so. You can call it hot dog style if you want to call it hot dog style, but it's a square, so it's not hot dog or hamburger. They're all the same size. So like a taco, I guess. Taco. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and, again, open it. And we're going to go across like this. Now, for those of you that remember with the origami crane, notice we did not put a line on this side. That's very important. We did not fold it again diagonally. You stop. Okay, you don't need this line. You don't want it because that will mess up this project. Okay, so then you should, after you fold it that way, when you open it back up, it should be able to spin on the top. Or if you're flipping it the other direction, you should still be able to bounce. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and push this in, and you want to make at least 3 of these. Now, can you use more? Absolutely. You can have 3, 4, 5, 8, 12. I had a kid last year that did one with 15. Oh my God, it was taller than he is. But you have to have at least 3 for this project to work. So I'm going to pause it and I'm going to come back to you when I have all 3. Okay, as you can see, I have all 3 through the power of editing. I have all 3 here in front of me, and I want to show you how this works. So when you folded it, okay, I'm going to go through these folds again. You first folded it to make the square, and then you flipped it over, and you folded it this way, and then you folded it this way, and you did this. I want to go ahead and show you something. Do not, I repeat, do not try and get away with it by folding it like this and then cutting off the end. I'm going to just cut it all sloppy because I've seen some kids do this. Okay. And then just sit here and think that you can do this and then fold it this way. This will not work. If you did this, it's not going to work. You have to go ahead, you have to open it and fold it and open it and fold it. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And it has that flip over. Notice I said you have to flip it. If you don't flip it before you fold it this way, it's also not going to work. The reason for this is when you fold paper, it creates what's called mountains and valleys. And it creates resistance and makes it harder for you to fold it if it's going the wrong direction. If it's kind of like your elbow or your wrist. With your hands, if you look at your fingers, your joints are designed to move a certain direction. When you fold a piece of paper, you're telling it and making it that it needs to fold that direction. Now, if you fold it, if you try folding it, if you have it folded this way and then you try to make it go the opposite direction, it's going to be a lot harder because it's not designed to do that anymore. You didn't pre-program it to do that direction. You want to program the paper the way it needs to go. Now, the 3 pieces. What you're going to be doing next is you're going to open it up. You're going to select one. It doesn't matter which one. You're going to open it up. Make sure that it's pointing upwards. Okay. And you're going to open up a second one like this. And this time you're going to flip it over and make it so that it's pointing downwards. This is very important. One should spin and one should be pointing down. Now, there's 2 ways to do it. The first way is to go ahead and have it pointed down like this, and then add your glue. Notice I didn't glob all the glue on. I just kind of went around the edges, made an X in the middle. That holds it just fine. You don't need 18 billion pounds of glue. Okay, then you can place it, line it up with the other square. And these lines should be folded the opposite direction. I'm going to lift it right here so you guys can see. So these lines should be facing the opposite direction. Okay, just like so. That's very important when it comes to actually putting your pieces together so that it actually collapses down. Now, the next thing that you can do, if you're having difficulties figuring that out, you can hold it like so with these little sections right here. And it kind of creates this little mouth. And you just put glue on one side and stick it right on the inside. However you stick it, and then you just lift up one side and you can glue it. That'll show you how to do it. So once you tuck it in there, I'm going to go ahead and lift this up. I'm going to use a different type of glue this time. Why is this not going? Is it sealed? It is not sealed. I'm not sure why why glue is not coming out. Let's try that again. So I'm just going to put a few little dots. Again, notice I'm not putting a billion pounds of glue on here. You don't want to soak your paper. So dots, not lots. And when you're through, please put the lid back on your bottle of glue, because otherwise you're going to run out of glue. It's going to go all dry and make your life miserable. Okay, then you're going to rub your fingers over the top to spread that glue out nice and thin. Now, it's not glued over here. What you would do is you'd fold this down, open the opposite side, lift, and then add glue there. Now, this is another option. Notice I just went around the outside edge, little bit in the middle. Again, outside edge, little bit in the middle. And then push it down. And then you let it dry. Once you have let it dry, you can go ahead and go on to the next step. The next step is very simple. The next step is decorating. So I'm going to go ahead and decide on what quote I'm going to use on the inside of my explosion box. So at this point, once it's glued, it should be able to open up, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But for the most part, you're done with the actual project of putting it together itself. So I'm going to go ahead and decorate this, and we're going to go ahead and talk about that in just a second. Okay guys, home stretch. As you can see, I went ahead and decorated this with one of my favorite quotes, which I find hilarious. This one is from Shakespeare, so to quote Shakespeare, "No, Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 3, line 87. Now I'm going to be looking to make sure that I see this. Wherever you get your quote from, do a little bit of research, Google it, find out where your quote comes from. Once you get your quote, whether it's going to be from a poem, whether it's going to be from music, whether it's going to be from something somebody said, however long or short your quote may be, you need to tell me who you got it from and where you got it. Now, as you can see, this is very big. You may have to stand back from your camera or have somebody take the picture for you while you're holding it so that I can see the entire thing. Now, I'm not necessarily going to want to see the other side. I'm not worried about the covers. I'll tell you about that in just a second. But I wanted to go ahead and point out different ways that you can decorate your paper. Now, I went ahead and just kind of put little different designs all over this, and I'm going to talk about the different ones and why I chose them. Now this one, these are mostly filler patterns. You can do full drawings, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now these filler patterns, I have bubbles, little dinosaur prints. I treated it like a Zentangle over here. You can use small lines in black and white with color. Notice all the filler lines and designs that I put, I chose specifically to do it in black and white. Can I do better? Obviously, yes. But I wanted this to be something in your wheelhouse. So in this particular case, I did it kind of like a Zentangle, and you could extend these patterns all the way behind your project, behind the words, and fill your entire project like that slowly. You could put a full drawing in the background, and you can do that with all of the different panels. Right here, put my little Bob character right here, staring down this little bumblebee. And you can fill up that entire space with a drawing if that's what you want to do that way. Again, these are some more filler patterns. I have flowers and polka dots and stars, little bumblebees and butterflies, little star shapes, asterisks, however you want to decide to fill your space. Once you have yours done and you've finished all the rest of it, now it's time to turn it into the card. Now, once you close it up, as you can see the patterns on the outside. Sometimes it leaks through the paper, and obviously I switched to different colored paper just so you guys can see that you can use colored paper if you want. In this particular case, I used colored printer paper, but you can use construction paper, cardstock, whatever you have, like I said before. Now, once you get to this point, you want to make sure to make the outside look pretty, and the best way to do that is to get something a little bit thicker like this. It's not 100% mandatory for the assignments, but I wanted you to have the option. You would go ahead and get a pen or a pencil and just trace the outside. If you don't want to trace it, it's usually about 4 inches by 4 inches. Let me go ahead and measure it just in case to make sure that I'm telling you the right size. 4.5 usually works a little bit better. So as you can see, it's 4.5 inches to cover the entire thing. 4.5 and 4.5. So you can either place it down on top and just trace it like I did, or you can go ahead and draw it out with 4 inches by 4 inches, no, 4.5 by 4.5 inches, and then you just cut it out. Now, I want to go ahead and show you a trick. When you have something like this and you want to go ahead and make sure that they're the exact same size, cut to the end of the project, line it up, fold it along that line, and it's going to go ahead and give you the rest of those measurements. So I'm going to cut that loose. Toss that. Separate the two pieces, and that way I can go ahead and glue them in place. I'm going to use regular glue this time, but again, you can use whatever glue you have available, and make sure you're not doing a lot. You don't want to wet your paper down too much, so just a little bit. Obviously, like I said, it's not big and gloopy. You want to go ahead and just stick that on top, and you can use a white piece of paper. You can paint it however you want to do it. And once you have this gives it a little bit more stability and makes it a little bit stronger. So that's why you want to go ahead and have a little bit of the stronger material. So once you do that, one thing you can do if you don't like the way that looks is you can get a white piece of paper, fold it until it's big enough to accommodate your paper. And then cut it to size. That way you can, if you want to glue it on top like this. So if you don't have another piece of thick piece of cardboard or anything like that, you don't 100% have to. You can use a double over piece of paper. Just like that. And you would just put glue in the center. You would just glue in here and glue on the top. Now, if you want to use it to cover up the designs, you just separate the pieces. Again, these steps aren't mandatory, so otherwise you would be done. This is just finalizing, adding some extra details, making it look pretty. Okay, to make it actually into a card. Now, again, I'm just going to put a little bit of glue out here. I usually do the outside edges, cross in the middle, stick a piece of paper on top, and now you can decorate this to your heart's content. You can see the words just a little bit through there. Once you decorate it, people will generally not notice. So go ahead and put glue all over the entire thing, cover it, and now it's got the top cover and the bottom part, and it makes it easier for you to open and expand. And you can customize this part however you want. This part is not for a grade, this is optional. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Remember, my office hours, for those of you that are in my class, it are Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 1 o'clock till 2:30. Please make sure you are turning in your work via Google Classroom and you have a good time. Make sure you enjoy this. Use this as a way to relax and get this done in an enjoying way. Don't force it. Don't get angry with it. Relax. If you get confused, feel free to pop in and ask me. And with that, your project is done. Again, make sure you're turning the picture of it in on Google Classroom, and you can have somebody help you take the picture if you need to. Have a good day and hope you're all doing well.